Okay, so this is the picture of your lungs. Okay, and so the learning outcomes are first to know what are the segments, no, of what we call your respiratory tract, the layers of the respiratory tract, and we'll discuss briefly the histology of the lungs itself, and we're going to correlate some clinical conditions related to the respiratory tract. All right, to begin with, let me just introduce first to you the principal structural features, no, specifically, no, note this, lower respiratory tract. No? So it is divided in only 3 layers. No? So the outermost layer, no, will be, of course, the tunica adventitia. And as we go in towards the lumen, we have the submucosa. And the innermost, of course, is the mucosa. Now, again, the mucosa is divided, of course, into your epithelium and your lamina propria. And for the epithelium, you have a progressive transition from your respiratory epithelium, which is, of course, your pseudostratified columnar ciliated, to eventually the simplest, no, which is your simple squamous epithelium. Now, lamina propria is made up of fibroelastic tissue where you may find lymphoid aggregates, what we call your MOD, if you remember, your mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. And what else do we find in lamina propria? There is also smooth muscle. No? So these are the two things that you will find in the lamina propria. You have lymphoid tissue and smooth muscle. Now note that the smooth muscle actually becomes more prominent, no, as the airway diameter decreases, meaning the smaller your airway is, the more prominent your muscle layer. Also, that the muscle layer is controlled by your autonomics, no, primarily by the autonomic nervous system. Now, going to the submucosa, the submucosa is immediately underneath the smooth muscle layer. Here naman, what will we find? Here in the submucosa, there are 2 things also. The first one are your seromucous glands. And note that beyond, no, the tertiary, what we call the tertiary bronchi, you don't see glands anymore. No? So yun lang, nakalimutan ha. There are no glands beyond your tertiary bronchi. Likewise, you may find cartilage here in the submucosa, no, which lies at the outer portion of the submucosa. Again, the cartilage diminishes, no, and in fact, again, be absent beyond your tertiary bronchi. No? So when you only find it, you will find out later on that you only find this cartilage on the upper parts of your lower respiratory tract. Okay. Then lastly, of course, you have your tunica adventitia, which is, as we well know, usually made up of fibroelastic tissue. If you go look at the picture here, no, so this one from this point to this point is your mucosa, no, where you have here your line epithelium, and next to this you can easily see the lamina propria, no, and here you can see in the lamina propria your lymphoid tissue. Aside from that, you see here also the muscle, no. So again, as noted, just beyond the muscle is already submucosa, where you may see, aside from your glands, your cartilage. The glands, however, are not so prominent here in this picture, but maybe these are some of them, these 2 here, no? And so the other thing you will see, as we said, is your cartilage. Of course, beyond the cartilage, you already have tunica adventitia. Kaya easy lang, no? 3 layers lang ang tatandaan natin. Mucosa, submucosa, and tunica adventitia. And you have to remember, what do we find in the mucosa? We find, of course, line epithelium and your lamina propria. And what do we look for in the submucosa? There are only 2 things also. You look for your glands and your cartilage. Okay, but do not forget, beyond the tertiary bronchus, you don't find glands, you don't find cartilage. No? So, ibig sabihin, hanggang tertiary bronchus lang ang cartilage at glands natin. So, this is the general characteristics of your lower respiratory tract. Now, then let's speak of what we call the bronchial tree. No? So this is the beginning again of what we call your conducting portion in the lower tract. So what we have here, firstly, we have the bronchi. No? So we have three types of bronchi. After the trachea here, the trachea now will divide into two bronchi here. As you can see, the right and the left bronchus. And the first division is what we call the primary, the principal, the main, or the stem bronchus. Please note of the names of the nomenclature. So you have two main primary bronchus. Okay. Now, these bronchus are just beginning to enter the lungs at the hilum, and therefore we say that these are still outside the lungs. Now we say extra pulmonary. So the primary bronchi are outside the lungs, and they are therefore called extra pulmonary bronchi. As to structure, note that they are similar to your trachea, except they are smaller. And after this, for primary bronchus, we'll now again divide. And this time we go to the lobes, and that is why we call them lobar bronchi, or our, of course, secondary bronchi. So for example, this one. This is a secondary bronchus, or what we call a lobar bronchus. Again, remember, we only have three lobes in the right lung, whereas we only have two lobes in the second lungs. So kaya nga, ayan, look at that. We have three in the right lung and two in the left lung, which is according, of course, to the number of lobes that we have in each lung. Okay. Now, of course, this bronchi will go to your pulmonary lobes. And since this is already within the lungs, we say they are intrapulmonary. Okay? And then the last part, where we have again a third division or tertiary bronchus is otherwise known as segmental bronchi. So this bronchi will go to what we call the bronchopulmonary segments of each of our lobes. And again, of course, these are already within the lungs. Yeah, these are also intrapulmonary. Now, after your bronchi, we'll again divide into smaller divisions. And this time we call them bronchioles, with the measurement of equal or less than 1 millimeter in diameter. Ayan. So, ayan nakalagay. Either less than or equal to 1 millimeter in diameter. So, ibig sabihin, pag 1 millimeter and smaller, it will be already a bronchiole. But after the bronchiole, we have the terminal bronchiole, which is naman now measuring equal to or less than 0.5 millimeter in diameter. So, this is now the sequence of our division of our conducting portion, or what we call the lower respiratory tract. So again, these are the parts that we will see in a little while. So that one was, of course, the conducting portion. Now let's move on to what we call the respiratory portion of your respiratory tract. So this is as a whole what we call the pulmonary lobule. So note this area. Once you see these sac-like structures, these are already part of what we call your pulmonary lobule. All of these parts is your pulmonary lobule. And as you can see here in the picture, we have here the terminal bronchiole. And after the terminal bronchiole, the next thing that you will have is this structure, what we call your respiratory bronchiole. Now, after the respiratory bronchiole, we'll further divide into smaller parts up to this portion here, where we will already have what we call your alveolar duct. And from the alveolar duct, we will now have a group of alveoli like this one here. Now, this is a group of alveoli, which we call an alveolar sac. And of course, an individual sac is what we call an alveolus. No? So all these structures, no, where you find this alveoli, no, where you will have gas exchange between blood and air, are all parts of your respiratory region. Again, what we call your pulmonary lobule. Don't forget, as long as you find a alveolus in the structure, it already becomes a part of our respiratory region. So again, don't forget, these are the parts of our respiratory region. Now let's discuss individually. Let's start off first with our bronchi, and note here in the picture, we have again, of course, the mucosa here, which is made up, of course, of the lining epithelium and the lamina propria over here. So in the lining epithelium, this is made up of your respiratory epithelium. So the stratified columnar ciliated with your goblet cells with well-defined, look at that, well-defined basal lamina. Now, as to the lamina propria, as you can see, you have the bundles of smooth muscle here. We said we also find smooth muscle here in the lamina propria, easily seen in the picture. And of course, you easily see also the mouth. Here, you see the lymphoid cells. Okay, so after the muscle is already submucosa. So this is already submucosa here. So what did we say will we find in the submucosa? The first thing we said are your glands. So this one's here. These are your glands, which are described as morphologically tubulo-alveolar, or by their secretion are said to be mixed glands, mixed with mucus. Now, since this is in the bronchi, of course, we call them bronchial glands. Like if it's in the trachea, you say tracheal glands and so forth. So here it's in the bronchi, yeah, we say bronchial glands. And right after the glands, as you can see, we have here the fibrocartilaginous layer, which, by the way, take note, is a complete ring, as you can see here in the picture. It's a complete ring in the primary and the secondary bronchus. But when we get to the tertiary bronchus, look at this one here. This already tertiary bronchus. You can easily see here your islands, or plates of cartilage. There you go, easily seen. So hindi na po a complete ring ng ating cartilage when we get to the tertiary bronchus. Okay, and of course, after these structures, after the submucosa, again, we have your tunica adventitia here, which we said is fibroelastic tissue. Okay. Of course, we usually find in your tunica adventitia blood vessels, lymphatics, and even the nerves. Okay, so that is always what we find in your tunica adventitia. Now, even in all other structures, that is what we usually find in the tunica adventitia. So anyway, this is what you see in your bronchus. Don't forget, the only significant thing that we have here is that the lining epithelium is PCCE with GC. You find here the smooth muscle. You find here your tubulo-alveolar glands, and you find here your cartilage. Again, if it's the primary or the secondary, the cartilage is a complete ring But if it's already tertiary, you find this in plates or islands like this one here. No? Pera-peraso na yung cartilage natin. Okay? So that will be our bronchi. Then we move on to the bronchioles. Remember, I said this is measuring about equal to or less than 1 millimeter. So this is a picture of your bronchiole. No? So again, we have the mucosa, of course, which may still be PCCE with GC to simple columnar ciliated. No? Ciliated, specifically the cilia, is for your clearing up of the debris and mucus that you may find here in the respiratory airway. No? And note that the movement is going upward, hindi downward. It's going upward. So we say it's like an escalator, no? Going upward so that we can expectorate. No? Expectorate, meaning we can discharge through the mouth, no? The debris and mucus that we will have here. And for the lamina propria, again, we find here very clearly, no, the smooth muscle. Ayan, clearly seen po. So the only thing that is clear here, no, in the bronchiole already is your mucosa, because after the mucosa, you have the submucosa fusing with the adventitia. Remember that in the submucosa, what we have is the glands and the cartilage. But since this is already the bronchiole, you don't find anymore, no, the cartilage nor the glands. Okay, so we only have here what? The submucosa fusing already with your adventitia. So ayan po, what we have here instead, we have your loose areolar tissue, again where we find blood vessels, lymphatic, and nerves. So here it is emphasized, there are no more cartilages, glands, nor lymphatic nodules, in this area beyond your muscle. No? Beyond the muscle, no more cartilage, no more glands, no more lymphatic nodules. Yeah. So these are the things that you will see in your bronchiole. By the way, I'd just like to say, no, that these structures, no, are continuous with one another, and that is why you will see, with regard to the lining epithelium, initially we'll see, like here, for example, we see here PCCE with GC and then simple columnar ciliated epithelium. I'd like to say that for our purposes, let us just consider, huwag na natin consider si PCCE with GC. No? Kasi this is still part of your bronchi. Let us simply consider, no, ito sa atin lang ha, let us simply consider for the bronchiole, your simple columnar ciliated epithelium. Kaya pag tinanong ko, what is the lining epithelium of your bronchiole? Huwag nyo nang lagay na PCCE with GC. Lagay nyo na simple columnar ciliated. Are we clear on that? Ha? Para wag na tayong meron PCCE with GC, meron pang simple columnar ciliated. Kasi remember, this started, no? This is continuous with your bronchi and then becoming your bronchiole. Kaya meron pang PCCE with GC tapos meron pang simple columnar. So as I was saying here, let's just stick to our simple columnar ciliated at this point. Okay? So this is the thing that I'd like to tell you, no, with regards to your bronchiole. Okay? So from your bronchiole, we now move on to your terminal bronchiole, which we already said is about less than or equal to 0.5 millimeters. So at this point, our lining epithelium naman now is simple cuboidal ciliated. So ciliated pa rin, ano? And this time we find here in between your epithelial cells what we call club cells, otherwise known as bronchiolar exocrines. Bronchiolar exocrine cells, which were formerly called Clara cells. Formerly, ha, Clara cells, don't forget, they are known now as club cells or bronchiolar exocrine cells. Now, what are club cells? Club cells are non-ciliated dome-shaped cells with secretory granules. No? They have chemosensory brush cells and small granule cells as well, what we call the part of your diffuse neuroendocrine system. No? So, ayan po. You may also have this. As to the lamina propria, no? So, syempre, sabi nga natin, right after the line epithelium, we already have the lamina propria. And again, what we have here, we simply have here again your smooth muscle, which is usually seen also in the picture. But don't forget, at this point, at the terminal bronchial level, we have your simple cuboidal ciliated with club cells. What do we have in the bronchial? We have the simple columnar ciliated. Kalimutan, di ba sabi ko na natin consider si PCCE with GC? Simply consider for your bronchial, ayan, balikan natin. Simply consider the simple columnar ciliated epithelium. Si PCCE, sa natin to consider, we just consider it in the bronchus. Are we clear on that? Para clear cut tayo. Pag sa nasa bronchus tayo, ito po ang mucosa natin. Pag nasa bronchial tayo, ito po ang mucosa natin. And when we get to your terminal bronchial, this is our mucosa. Are we clear? Guys, are we clear?
Yes.
Yes po, Doc.
Ay, salamat. Don't forget, again, as I was telling you, that all these structures are continuous with one another, and that is why sometimes when you study the slides, no, you will see that in each of these structures, you may even see combination, no, of simple cuboidal on one side and simple columnar on one side. Kasi nga nagka-transition. So that is what we may actually see on examining the slides. Again, we just emphasize that there are no more cartilage nor glands here in the terminal bronchial. Now, let us just briefly consider what we call your club cells. What are they for? What are they specifically mentioned? Why are they mentioned? So club cells actually secrete lipoproteins and mucins of surfactant. Hindi po surfactant ang sinisekret niya. It secretes the lipoproteins and mucins of surfactant. Specifically in the epithelium, what we call the fluid layer of the epithelium. Aside from that, the secretion of the club cells can detoxify inhaled synabiotic compounds, specifically by the enzymes coming from the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So yun po, dito po sa epithelium, we have the presence of the surfactant lipoproteins and mucins. In the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, we have the compounds or enzymes actually that can detoxify synabiotic compounds. What do you mean by synabiotic? Actually, these are your germs. Biotic means live. Okay. So what else? The third one is that they can actually also secrete antimicrobial peptides and cytokines for local immune defense. As you learn in your immune system, one of the secretions are your cytokines, which are of course for immune defense. Diba? Lastly, there's a small population of this cell that can act as stem cells, providing replacement for other bronchiolar cell types. In other words, a club cell can actually transform into another type of cell Kaya can replace, as noted here, other bronchiolar cell types. Kumbaga, they are reserved population of your cells. Okay? So these are your club cells. Don't forget, quite important ang function. No? And then let's now look at your respiratory region, starting off with your respiratory bronchial. So here, the line epithelium is also simple cuboidal ciliated with club cells as well, and also specifically noted with scattered alveoli. So kakaiba ito sa terminal bronchial, no? Kasi even if they are lined with simple cuboidal, ciliated with club cells, they have, aside from this lining cells, we have scattered alveolar in between. No? So as we well know, it is in the alveoli where gas exchange actually takes place. No? And in this alveoli, the lining epithelium now is simple squamous, no? Kaya iba naman ngayon lining when you see your alveolus. Like here, look at this. This is an example of your alveolus that is inserted in between the lining epithelium, no, of your respiratory bronchial here. No? So here you can see this is said to be your simple cuboidal ciliated with, of course, again, you may find your club cells. Now, again, you may also find here still, no, your smooth muscle, like this one here. This is smooth muscle, no, but it's still well developed, but they do not form a thick layer, no, manipis lang, as you can see in the picture here. No? So ayan, these are your smooth muscles. No? So this again are the things that we see in the respiratory bronchial. As you can see, panipisan ng panipisan ating structure. No? So after the respiratory bronchial, we have in sequence first this structure, what we call your alveolar duct. And of course, as we said, a group of alveoli is your alveolar sac, like this one here. And finally, you have the individual alveolus. No? So what do we have here? It says that the alveolar duct, no, as noted here, is completely lined by your alveolar openings. Ayan, no, kita nyo. You have alveolar one after the alveoli one after the other, no, in your alveolar duct. Whereas in the alveolar sac, we say it's simply made up of a cluster of alveoli. Now, what is the lining epithelium? Once you see alveoli in the name of the structure, they are all lined with simple squamous epithelium. Note ha, sabi pa, extremely attenuated. Ibig sabihin, napakanipis na squamous epithelial cells. Okay? Now, what about the lamina propria? You still have here extremely thin, elastic, and reticular fibers where you may find capillaries. No? So ito po, dito kaya, as you can see there, medyo makapal pa. Okay? Kasi there is still lamina propria with elastic and reticular fibers, no? With capillaries. Now, the next picture actually shows you an alveolar sac. No? These are all alveolar sac because as you can see, it's made up of a group of your alveoli. Okay, so this is just the purpose of that picture. So let's now go to your alveoli. No? So the alveolus is a sac-like evagination measuring around 200 micra in diameter. And of course, as we said, this lines your respiratory bronchial down to your alveolar sac. No? So together with your airways, the alveoli are responsible for the spongy nature of your lungs. Now, if you look at your lungs, parang sponge. So each alveolus is like a pouch. You know? Yeah, it's like a rounded pouch which is open on one side, supposed to be like this one here, open on one side and ends up on a sac or duct on the other side. Again, don't forget, this is where the gases, no, oxygen and carbon dioxide are interchanged between the blood and the air. Okay, so yan na po. Now let's look specifically, wait lang, move ko lang to. At this point, no, between the one alveolus and another, no, what we call an interalveolar septum. Okay. What do we see in an interalveolar septum? So this one here, this is your interalveolar septum. This one alveolus, another alveolus. No? So what do we see? We see here capillary network. We find here connective tissue elements which contain, of course, fibroblasts, extracellular matrix, elastic and reticular fibers, including macrophages and white blood cells. Nandito lahat yan, no? And of course, your two types of lung cells, your pneumocyte 1 and pneumocyte 2, no? So here you can easily see identified as pneumocyte 1, and this one is identified as pneumocyte 2. Now, one other thing that you may find in the interalveolar septum is what we call your respiratory membrane, otherwise known as your blood-air barrier, no, or BAB. So this is part, as we said, of your alveolar septum, where specifically gas can pass in exchange between air and blood. So if you look at the picture here, assuming this is your alveolus and this is your capillary, no? So what do we find as your blood-air barrier? So this will be your blood-air barrier. You have here initially your alveolar epithelium, which is usually made up of type 1 cells. And then we also have on the other side, on the capillary side, your capillary endothelium. And in between them, you find the fused basal laminae of these two epithelium. No? The fused basal lamina, the fused basal lamina of your alveolar epithelium and your capillary endothelium. So this one here. All these three makes up what we call the blood-air barrier. So this is another picture of that. No? Look at this. This is now your alveolar epithelium. This is now your capillary endothelium. And this one is your fused basal lamina. Okay, so again, that will be your BAB or your blood-air barrier. Now, another thing that you may find in the interalveolar septum is what we call the alveolar pores of cone. No? So this one, these are your alveolar pores of cone, no? That one. So these are 10 to 15 micron in diameter. So again, they penetrate your interalveolar septum. And what is the purpose? They connect one alveolus, no, to a neighboring alveolus, or which of course opens, maybe opening into a different bronchiole, no? So what is the purpose of the alveolar pores of the cone? They may actually equalize air pressure in the alveoli and therefore permit collateral circulation of air. No? If one bronchiole is obstructed, let us say the bronchiole to which this alveolus is connected is obstructed, so we can now pass the air from here, now from this alveolus can now pass through this and eventually into another bronchiole. Ayun po. That's the purpose of your alveolar pore of cone. Okay. Now let's look at your alveolar epithelium. as we said, it's the simple squamous epithelium. And we said we have two types of alveolar cells. No, you have your type 1 and your type 2, where your type 1 are small alveolar or pneumocyte type 1, whereas your type 2 are your great alveolar or septal pneumocyte type 2. So type 1 are actually squamous cells, whereas type 2 are cuboidal cells. The majority of our alveolar cells, 95% to be exact, is actually pneumocyte 1. No? And we have here in these alveolar cells what we call occluding junctions that prevent leakage of tissue fluid into your alveolar airspace. Ibig sabihin, para walang fluid sa loob ng alveolus, air lang, no? Whereas in the pneumocyte 2, what is important about this is that they secrete surfactant, no? Which of course lowers the surface tension inside an alveolus so that the alveolus will not collapse. Meaning it always remains open, no? Para hindi mahirap inflate again ang ating lungs. No? That's the purpose of your surfactant. So you see lamellar bodies within the pneumocyte 2, and these are membrane-bound large granules which are involved in your surfactant synthesis. Let's look at this. Okay? So look at this. This is actually your type 1 here. No? As you can see, or this one here, these are, as you can see, squamous cells. Whereas here, this is your type 2. You can see it's cuboidal, no? And you even see granules within, okay? And this is an electron micrograph of your pneumocyte 2. You can easily see here these bodies. No? These are the lamellar bodies which actually represent your newly synthesized surfactant. No? Ayan, no? Plenty lamellar bodies within this pneumocyte 2. Okay. Now, another thing that you may find within the interalveolar septum is your alveolar macrophage. No? So the macrophages may be found in the septum here or within the alveolus itself, no? Like this here. These are macrophages, this one. And here also, as noted, meron din dito. No? So, ayan, this one here. This is also a macrophage, another one here. So what do? They are actually, remember, this is a macrophage. This eats up the dust particles that may enter into the lungs, and that is why they are usually called dust cells. Huh? And note that if you have what we call congestive heart failure, as I said, only if you have congestive heart failure, then the lungs become congested with blood, and red blood cells may pass into your alveoli, no? If you have congestive heart failure. And there you go, your macrophages may engulf these RBCs, and there you can, and then you call them your heart failure cells. Now, one test to determine the presence of your heart failure cells is to test the presence of iron pigment, no, or hemosiderin in the sputum. No? So that is one way to find out if you have maybe heart failure. Okay, so these are the things that you may find within your lungs. All of this. Okay. So in summary, this is what we have. Again, we said that for the bronchi, you have your respiratory epithelium. As I said, for the bronchial, wag na tong simple columnar. Ay, simple, ito na pala, simple ciliated columnar. Huwag natin consider si cuboidal. Ha? Kasi sabi natin si cuboidal is already in the terminal bronchial. No, look at this. No? Talagang we have transition zones. No? So again, For the bronchi, we simply consider the respiratory. For the bronchial, we simply consider the simple ciliated columnar. For the terminal bronchial, the simple cuboidal ciliated with club cells. And for the respiratory bronchial, again, we have the simple cuboidal ciliated with club cells with scattered alveoli. And lastly, for all structures with alveoli in their name, they are all lined with simple squamous, no, epithelium. No? As we noted previously, we said they are extremely attenuated cells. Okay, so these are all the these are all the description as to the presence of your muscle and your cartilage. And here again, note these are the main functions of all these structures. No? So don't forget, you only find cartilage up to the bronchi. No more here already. From this point downwards, no cartilage, no glands, only here in the bronchi. No, kadali naman. Okay, so let's now go to clinical correlation. The first one we'll talk about is asthma. This is actually a chronic inflammation of your bronchial tree, usually characterized by sudden constriction of the smooth muscle in bronchioles, where we can have what we call bronchospasm. Now, the constriction is due to the granulation of the mast cell, triggered, of course, by antigens, and this may result in mild to severe difficulty in breathing. The treatment is usually by application of epinephrine and other sympathomimetic drugs with the purpose of relaxing the muscle and increasing the bronchiolar diameter. So that is the purpose of the treatment with epinephrine and other sympathomimetic drugs, no? To relax the muscle and increase the bronchiolar diameter. Okay. The next condition is atelectasis. This one is due to obstruction of air supply in the bronchi. No? So note this, a bronchi ito. And this can be due to excessive mucus or aspirated material, which can cause a collapse of a pulmonary lobule. Look at that, pulmonary lobule. So normally, this condition is reversible once the obstruction is relieved, but if it becomes persistent, it can lead to fibrosis and loss, of course, of respiratory function. No? So that is what we call atelectasis. There is obstruction to your passages, no? Especially at the level of your bronchi, no? Of your lobar bronchi, kasi lobules, collapse of pulmonary lobules ang mangyayari. Okay? So, what is the next? We have what we call the respiratory distress syndrome. We have this in adults as well as in infants. No? In adults, we call it diffuse alveolar damage. No? And it can be due to various types of injury to the alveolar epithelium and capillary endothelial cells. Now, take note that the injury is in the alveolus and capillary endothelial cells. So what are the causes of injury? It can actually be to infections, both viral and bacterial. It can be due to inhalation of toxic gases, chemicals, or air with excessive oxygen. And it can actually be due to fat embolism. No? So reversible po ito if the initiating factors are removed. No? So this is what we call the adult respiratory distress syndrome or the diffuse alveolar damage. So that don't forget, kaya nga diffuse alveolar damage because the damage is most specifically in the alveoli and in the capillary endothelium. Now, the infant respiratory distress can lead to death in premature babies. No? Bakit specifically in premature babies? Because this is due to incomplete differentiation of your type 2 alveolar cells, where there is still a decrease, no, or deficit in your surfactant. So, syempre, hindi pa masyadong maka-expand ang alveoli in these infants. And so what is the treatment? We usually insert an endotracheal tube where we can provide what we call continuous positive airway pressure, or what we call CPAP, or we may also provide exogenous surfactant, which are either synthesized chemically or purified from lungs or cattle. Yun, pwede naman palang makagawa ng exogenous surfactant. Okay? So that is the common cause for your infant respiratory distress syndrome and a deficient surfactant in your type 2 alveolar cells. Okay? Then we have emphysema, which is usually related to cigarette smoking. So this is a chronic lung disease which involves dilatation and permanent enlargement of the bronchioles. Note what is involved are your bronchioles, where you have loss of cells in the alveoli and part of the airway walls. This condition, by the way, is irreversible. Now, it can cause irreversible loss, of course, of your respiratory function. I would just like to briefly describe pneumonia, which is a condition caused by infection in the respiratory regions of the lungs. Okay, and this produces inflammatory changes in the lungs. It can actually be due to viral or even bacterial infection. Okay. Now, lastly, we speak of lung cancer. You have three types. You have the squamous cell, the adenocarcinoma, and the small cell carcinoma. The squamous cell is most common in cigarette smokers, whereas adenocarcinoma is most common in non-smokers. The squamous cell usually arises from the epithelial cells. Now, usually epithelial cells are involved dito sa mga carcinoma na to. Epithelial cells of your segmental or tertiary bronchus. Now, please take note. But for the adenocarcinoma, it usually is from the epithelial cells of bronchioles and alveoli. So, mas maliit na ito. No? Now, lastly, we have the small cell carcinoma. This is actually quite rare. It is less common, but highly malignant. And it can develop from neoplastic transformation of the small granule Kulczycki cell. Now you remember this is one of the cells that you find in your pseudostratified columnar ciliated epithelium, di ba? So this is a population of cells that may actually transform into cancer. No? And then we can have specifically noted here in the bronchial epithelium. Okay, so yan po ha. So this will be the things that you may find with regards to lung cancer. So these are all the things I'd like to tell you today. I hope it's a fruitful day for all of us. This is actually just a review of your gross anatomy. As I was saying, for the right lung, you have 3 lobes. For the left lung, you have 2 lobes separated by what we call fissures. Okay? And for the segments, ito po yung tinatawag natin bronchopulmonary segments. No? You have 10 segments in the right, 8 segments in the left. Okay? So that's all of it. Goodbye. Di pa pala.